everyone. My name is Ben Soltoff. I'm going to talk to you about the future of climate entrepreneurship education. 6 months ago, I went to Dubai for the UN Climate Conference. I'd been to a couple of these conferences. I'd followed even more. This was the biggest one yet. Over 100,000 people gathered in this gleaming and kind of absurd city built from the bottom up, pretty much to showcase abundance. There's a lot of talk at this conference. Companies clamoring to position themselves as leaders, oil states promoting themselves as paragons of sustainability. Amidst all of this talk, I was on the hunt for real signs of progress. And one of the places that I found the most encouraging progress was in a little cluster of booths called the Startup Village. I think they actually used to be food stalls, and they were off away from the core conference. And I spent hours there talking to startup founders about what they were working on. And a lot of conferences have a place like this with startups and booths displaying their work, and they're always my favorite place to spend time. They're often tucked away, but it's worth it. Why? Because startups are doing some of the most novel and important work on climate solutions. Next generation modes of electricity generation, energy storage, industrial heat, carbon removal, and new business models and strategies for deploying and scaling the technologies that we already have. It's startups who drive all of that forward. Even at this conference, I was really excited to see startups on stage, this exact stage, yesterday at the Great Global Innovation Challenge. Maybe next year they'll even be across the hall on the big stage. Who knows? We'll see. What I love about startups is they look at this gap between where we are today and where we could be tomorrow. And they build tangible and meaningful solutions to bridge that gap. As we say at MIT, they get ship done. SHIP being short for entrepreneurship, of course. And where is there a more important gap to bridge between where we are today and where we need to be tomorrow than climate change? You've seen charts like this before. We are making progress, but we're not where we need to be to avert the worst impacts. We need to get ship done on climate change. We need more climate startups. I've spent the last 7 years of my career working with climate tech startups, especially focused on universities. I was previously at Yale, and now I'm at MIT. I work now at the Martin Trust Center for MIT Entrepreneurship. This center specializes in teaching entrepreneurship. Yes, entrepreneurship can be taught. And before I tell you about the future of climate entrepreneurship education, I want to tell you a little bit about how we teach entrepreneurs at MIT today. We start at the earliest possible point of the entrepreneurship journey. That's not some brilliant new idea. It's not technological breakthrough. It's a mindset. Yes, you can. Yes, you can be an entrepreneur. Yes, you can lead a team. Yes, you can build a real solution to a real problem faced by real people. Yes, you can change the world. We hold a 2-week festival at the start of each school year, which you see pictured here, to drive that message home with pomp and circumstance. And then once we've convinced the students that they can be entrepreneurs, we teach them how to do it. We use a proven 24-step framework called disciplined entrepreneurship. Now, I only have 10 minutes, so I can't walk you through all 24 of the steps of this framework, but I can tell you a little bit about why it's successful. It was developed 10 years ago by my colleague, Bill Aulette, and I'll tell you 3 things that make it successful. One is that it's accessible. It takes this daunting journey of entrepreneurship and breaks down into discrete steps. This is a tried and true way to reach people. Think 12-step programs to recovery from addiction, or even an 8-fold path to enlightenment in Buddhism. Using steps is a classic approach, and it works. It's also rigorous. It's based on years of teaching at MIT, as well as real-world startup experience. And third, it's open source. The framework is available for free online, along with a lot of resources for entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship educators. Once they've learned the skills, and as well as learning the skills, we support students and create opportunities for them to actually try it out. They learn by doing. We have them work on startups while they're in school. And sometimes that's a startup that they want to do full-time, they're committed to it, and sometimes they're just doing it for the sake of trying out the process. Either way is fine with us, because at that early stage, we care about the students and their learning, not the startups. For those who do want to continue, we have a capstone experience. It's a 3-month accelerator called Delta V that happens in the summer. We actually just kicked off the 13th cohort this week. I had to step away from them to come talk to all of you. And a few years ago, we looked at the history of this accelerator program. And we looked in particular at the survival rate of the startups who had participated in the first 10 years. And I want you all to take a guess in your head about what that survival rate might be for an accelerator program for students coming out of MIT. Actually think of a specific percentage. You don't need to shout it out because there's a lot of you here. A lot of times when I ask folks to do this, they come up with about 10% because that's based on cultural tropes around startups. However, it's 61% in the first 10 years of startups that went through this program were still around or had been acquired. And these startups weren't just in it for profit. 89% of the startups who participated were in some way aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So what does this all have to do with climate? For the past 17 years, MIT has offered a course called Climate and Energy Ventures. It started back in the days of what some of you might call Clean Tech 1.0. And this course brings together students across disciplines, business, technology, policy, even brings together students from MIT and Harvard, and they work together in teams, working on real promising ideas. Over the years, this course has reached and educated hundreds of students on climate entrepreneurship, and it's spun out over 50 startups. You can see some examples of those startups here. You might recognize some of the logos, and a couple that aren't on here were actually on this stage yesterday. Macrocycle and AeroShield, part of the Innovation Challenge. And this model of teaching climate entrepreneurship is not just successful in Massachusetts. A few years ago, when Greentown Labs expanded their operations to Houston, they called our center and asked our help on connecting with a consortium of universities across Texas. We said yes, absolutely. And what resulted from that was an organization now called the Texas Exchange for Energy and Climate Entrepreneurship. It has reached hundreds of students across Texas using some of the same principles that work at MIT. There's inspiration. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Take that energy transition startup job instead of going and doing oil and gas with a big energy major. Then we teach them the skills. University of Texas at Austin just launched a climate and energy ventures course modeled after the one at MIT. And we support students with hands-on learning. We encourage them to build startups. Some of the initial startups that we supported are now members of Greentown Houston. And this project in particular really resonates with people. I give a lot of talks on climate entrepreneurship to audiences around the world, and their eyes light up when they hear this, especially audiences in places like the Middle East, Central Asia, Australia, because of course a place like MIT is going to be all about innovation. That is to be expected. But climate entrepreneurship in a place like Houston, that's an old dog learning a new trick. And that's exciting. That's what we need to be doing around the world, especially in places that are transitioning their economies away from extractive industries. And on that note, said I would tell you about the future, so let's talk about the future. What's in store for climate entrepreneurship education? I want to start with the near future. I mentioned earlier the disciplined entrepreneurship framework. This framework is outlined in a book titled, shockingly, Disciplined Entrepreneurship. This came out 10 years ago and has since become a bestseller. An updated version just came out this year. And my colleague Paul Cheek put out a book on startup tactics. I am thrilled to announce right here on this stage that I am working on a version of disciplined entrepreneurship specifically for climate and energy startups. This book is going to have the same qualities that made the original successful: accessible, rigorous, open source. but it will be uniquely tailored to the challenges of climate tech startups. And it's coming out in 2025. I have been working with a team who teaches the Climate and Energy Ventures course to make it happen. In particular, Todd Hines, who was on this stage yesterday. We're drawing from the almost 2 decades of history of that course and the startups who've gone through it. Now, I said that I would tell you about the future, and what's the first thing that I bring up? Print media, the future. If you're skeptical about that, I understand. But the book is just a jumping off point for a whole suite of resources. Our center is our center has actually recently built a set of generative AI tools to help students build the first steps, the first draft of the discipline entrepreneurship framework. You can see it happening here in real time. It's powered with the latest version of ChatGPT, and what used to take them weeks in class, they can now do in seconds. You see, this is how fast it goes. Just like everything that AI comes up with, you need to validate, you need to figure out if it works in real life, but that initial push alone is immensely valuable. As we write the book, we're building a similar set of AI tools specifically for climate startups so that they can get the process started faster than ever. Just getting the clicker here. That book and the AI tools are part of a whole ecosystem of resources that we are going to make available. And that way, anyone, anywhere, can teach climate entrepreneurship like we teach it at MIT. So universities, accelerators, incubators, they'll all have access to most of these tools for free. And this will unlock the potential for climate entrepreneurship all around the world. So, if this vision excites you, learn more at climateandenergystartups.com. Sign up to find out when the book is going to be published. Be the first to know when the resources become available, the AI tools and the other resources. And let us know your climate tech stories, lessons, and insights. We want to hear from you. Yes, you can be part of the future of climate entrepreneurship education. Thank you.
Just stand over here. So I had lunch with Ed Roberts a year ago, passed away recently in his 90s, and he helped put entrepreneurship on the map at MIT. And what's interesting is all major universities are creating centers like what you just heard about. And these centers lend themselves to a place for students to do startups, but they also can create bridges to the community. And all of you can be advisors, co-founders, help with product, help with strategy, help with policy. And this is one of the ways that we're going to get some real traction. So thank you for making this accessible. And here's to the future of entrepreneurship.
Thank you, John.
Great. So we have 2 minutes, and then we're going to start our next block. We have 3